By the time Marcos sat down at his desk, the day had already taken something from him. It was barely mid-morning, but his mind felt like a room with too many lights turned on at once. He had already chosen what to wear, checked the news, answered a few messages, reordered his priorities 3 times, and spent too long deciding between coffee and water, between the fast route and the safer one, between replying now or later. Each choice was tiny. Each one seemed harmless. And yet, together, they had quietly drained the sharpness from his mind. He stared at his laptop, fingers hovering above the keyboard, while the office around him hummed with the low noise of phones, footsteps, and distant conversations. Somewhere in the background, someone laughed. Somewhere else, a printer coughed out a sheet of paper. But Marcos barely noticed any of it. His attention was thinning out like a signal losing strength. Then the email arrived. It was the kind of message that looked ordinary at first glance, the kind busy people often skim through and put off until later. But this one mattered. A lot. It carried a business decision that could change the direction of his company for months, maybe years. Contract. A deadline. A choice with consequences. He read the first lines once. Then again. The words were all there, but the meaning refused to settle in his mind. "Can you take a look before noon?" his partner had asked earlier. "I will," Marcos had answered, confident in the way exhausted people often are before they realize how empty they've become. Now the confidence was gone. He leaned back in his chair and rubbed his forehead. The room suddenly felt too bright, too loud, too full. He was not confused because he lacked intelligence. He was confused because his brain had already spent too much energy making decisions that seemed unimportant. By the time the truly important moment arrived, the mind that should have been clear was already worn down. And that is the hidden danger most people never see. We think bad decisions come from ignorance, weakness, or poor character. But sometimes they come from something far more ordinary: mental fatigue. A mind that has been asked to choose too much, too often, until even a strong person starts making sloppy calls. Marcos looked at the contract again, trying to force clarity out of exhaustion. But clarity does not appear on command when the mind is overloaded. It has to be protected, preserved, designed for. If you've ever felt strangely tired before the day has even really started, don't ignore that feeling. It may be costing you more than you think. And in a moment, you'll see why the smartest men don't try to make better decisions by thinking harder. They build lives that require fewer decisions in the first place. Marcos sat in his office staring at a contract he should have rejected the moment he read the first page. But his mind was no longer sharp enough to see the trap clearly. The morning had already taken everything from him. One decision after another had quietly drained the reserve he never knew he was spending. What shirt to wear? What to eat? Which message deserved a reply? Which route would get him to the office faster? Each choice seemed small, almost harmless. Together, they became a tax on his mind. By the time the real decision arrived, the one that could protect or damage his business, Marcos was no longer thinking like a strategist. He was thinking like a tired man trying to survive the next 5 minutes. His eyes moved across the page, but the meaning no longer stayed long enough to be questioned. The pressure in the room felt heavier than the paperwork itself. "It's fine," someone said. "This is standard." And because his mental energy was gone, he nodded. That is the quiet danger of decision fatigue. It does not announce itself with drama. It does not feel like collapse. It feels like weariness, impatience, and the strange temptation to accept the easiest option just to make the discomfort stop. A man can be intelligent, disciplined, and experienced, yet still make a terrible call when his brain has been forced to choose too much for too long. This is where psychology becomes practical. Essentialism teaches us that not everything deserves our attention. Systems thinking shows us that repeated small choices are never really small when they shape the entire flow of a day. If every morning begins with unnecessary friction, then every serious decision later in the day is being made by a weaker version of you. That means the problem is not only what you decide. It is how many decisions you ask yourself to make before the important ones arrive. And this changes everything, because the goal is not to become cold or robotic. The goal is to protect your mental energy like it matters, because it does. A simpler routine, a clearer wardrobe, a standard breakfast, a more organized work rhythm. These are not signs of laziness. They are signs of intelligence. They reduce noise. They preserve strength. They keep your best thinking available when the stakes are high. If this already sounds familiar, give the video a like, because you are not alone in this fight. The modern world is designed to exhaust your attention before lunch. But the good news is that your mind can be redesigned too. And once you understand how to remove the hidden leaks, you start making better decisions almost automatically. In the next moment, we'll get into the simple principle that can save hours of mental energy every week, and maybe even protect you from your next costly mistake. Marcos sat there with the contract open in front of him, the numbers blurring slightly as if the page itself had started to move away from him. Just an hour earlier, he had felt sharp, disciplined, in control. But now, after a morning spent answering messages, deciding what to eat, reviewing expenses, rejecting distractions, and trying to keep everyone else's problems from invading his mind, something inside him had quietly gone empty. The room was still. The air conditioner hummed. His phone vibrated again. He didn't even look at it. Across the table, the other man kept talking with the calm confidence of someone who knew Marcos was already tired. "This is the best version of the deal," he said, sliding the paper closer. "If you want growth, this is the moment." Marcos nodded too quickly, not because he understood, because he wanted the pressure to stop. That is the hidden danger of decision fatigue. Not that you become lazy, but that you become vulnerable. Your mind, after too many small choices, stops evaluating with clarity and starts searching for relief. And relief often sounds a lot like a bad decision wearing a confident face. You begin to confuse urgency with importance. You mistake exhaustion for intuition. You tell yourself, just get it over with. And that sentence can cost you months, years, or sometimes far more. Later, when the contract became a burden and the hidden clauses revealed themselves, Marcos replayed the moment again and again. The mistake was not made in that meeting alone. It had been built all day long, choice by choice, leak by leak, until his mental energy was so scattered that he no longer had the strength to think deeply when it mattered most. This is why systems matter more than motivation. A man who depends on willpower alone is fighting a battle that is already rigged against him. But a man who designs his environment, simplifies his routines, and removes unnecessary decisions is no longer reacting to life every minute. He is protecting his future judgment. He is building a mind that stays clear when others are mentally collapsing. Imagine waking up and not negotiating with your closet, your breakfast, your schedule, your first task. Imagine how much sharper your thinking becomes when the day no longer steals pieces of you before noon. That is not laziness. That is strategy. That is wisdom. And once you see it, you start noticing the hidden drains everywhere in your life. The tiny decisions that never seem important until they quietly rob you of your best moment. By the time Marcos finally sat still, the damage was already done. The contract lay open on the desk like a silent accusation, and the room around him felt too bright, too quiet, too late. He read the signature line again, then the terms, and then the terms again, hoping they would somehow become kinder. But they didn't. The truth remained the same. The worst decision of his week hadn't come from ignorance. It had come from exhaustion. That is the hidden trap many people never see coming. We tell ourselves that good choices require intelligence, discipline, or willpower, but the deeper truth is simpler and harsher. A tired mind does not think more carefully, thinks less. It reaches for the easiest option, the fastest escape, the path of least resistance. And when the day has already been filled with tiny decisions, the big ones become dangerous because the mind is no longer fresh enough to protect them. Marcos learned that painfully, but he also learned something better. He learned that the solution was not to become superhuman. It was to become intentional. Instead of asking himself to decide everything again and again, he began building systems that decided for him. The same shirt in the morning, the same breakfast, the same time to check messages, the same structure for his workday, less noise, less friction, less mental leaking, and slowly, The fog began to lift. This is the quiet power of the single decision principle. One choice made well can remove hundreds of smaller choices from your life. One simple routine can protect your energy before the world has a chance to drain it. One clear system can do more for your focus than 100 motivational speeches. That is how clarity is built. Not through force, but through design. If this message hit home, give the video a like. Not because it changes everything by itself, but because it says you understand the value of protecting your mind before it is too late. And now I want to ask you something honest. What drains your mental energy the fastest during the day? Is it too many decisions, too much noise, or the lack of a system that actually works for you? If you want more insights like this, subscribe now because the next step is even more practical. How to build a life where good decisions become almost automatic.